As it goes. Well, hello, everybody, including Mark Lee. I'm Nick Palavita, the voice of reason, along with Mark Lee, who is substituting in for Steve, who's, I think, at PBS right now, finishing up
Yeah,
his...
we think that he's at
That guy's
PBS
just
doing
really
that whole
busy.
PBS thing. You know, he's a celebrity on PBS and all of that. So definitely he's doing his thing.
Yeah, so I guess we got to figure out what's going on around the world right now. So
Well,
what do you have on your topics, Mark? 'Cause you're
Well, I had a
for
couple of things on my
legitimate
topics that were
July.
going on in the world, including some stuff. I can't wait till Shaquille hears one of the things that I pulled up because he's just going
He's
to love this.
backstage.
I know he's
in
backstage, so
Australia
he's
right
going to love this one. But one thing that I know we were going to talk about yesterday is apparently Mr. Biden, I got to look and see what they said about this, was going to meet with the fine folks over there in New York because they were going to discuss gun violence because apparently gun violence is a major issue. So they were going to discuss that and kind of come up with maybe some solutions or some non-solutions and things along those lines. But, you know, every time that there's a major disaster, we start studying demographics. And, you know, demographics are wonderful things and all of that. And that's why I'm looking to see what Shaquille's got to say about this latest article that I pulled up. Because apparently, this is what health officials said yesterday. Are you ready for this, Nick?
Yeah, as ready as I am. What did our great health officials say?
Our great health officials have said that gay and lesbian adults in the United States have higher COVID-19 vaccination rates than heterosexual adults. So this is what they have said. They have come up with a study about the vaccination rates and have done it according to orientation. So according to a report released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's, lesbian and gay men ages 18 and older reported a higher rate than some of their other counterparts. So they reported a higher vaccination coverage overall, 85.4%, than their heterosexual counterparts, 76.3%, whose rates were similar to those of the bisexual adults, 76.3% as well, and the transgender adults. Yes, they even went and tried to find out what the results were for the transgender adults, and that was 75.7%. So we have now gone into a whole conversation around the success rate of the vaccine in terms of orientation. So apparently when it comes to confidence in vaccine safety, 76.3% of gay or lesbian adults said they felt either completely or very confident with the shots, while only 63.9% of the heterosexual adults said they felt that way. So I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute. So the whole woke culture has gone into the whole concept of.
I'm glad they did that study. I think that Shaquille is very interested in the fact that gays, lesbians, or whatever have been vaccinated at a higher rate than straight people. That piece of information will send the markets climbing.
Oh, absolutely.
And Shaquille will be going out of his chair because that's what we do here in the United States of America. We study demographics, but I wish they would say why that takes place, because I have my hypothetical. Here's what I believe the reason why. Since that community was crushed by AIDS, they're looking for anything that from science to help them survive, and so they saw this as a savior. Any person, that's the reason older people take it, is because they went through polio, smallpox, measles, mumps. The reason the younger people generation doesn't take it, those have all been eradicated. And also I'm immune, which of course, a lot of them, their immune systems are pretty strong. I'm not going to negate that. The statistics give their death rates to be much lower. But at the same time, then they just become a infection vehicle for older people like me who really don't appreciate somebody snotting on me with their COVID-19 virus. But that's my opinion.
I hear you, but like I said,
Wait, that's my opinion. Am I going to be suspended for
I'm
2
just going to
weeks?
bring this quote because Shaquille's going to love this one.
Wait a minute. Is this the view? Am I going to be suspended for 2 weeks? I just expressed an opinion that may not be what our masters at the Pod TV, IBM TV network want us to say. Maybe
we don't believe in that kind of stuff and everything.
Okay.
But apparently,
but
this
I
is what
expressed
they said.
A different opinion.
Apparently, this is what they said. I can't wait to hear what Shaquille's got to say for this. Like I said, I know he's always really attacking the woke culture, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. But it says that understanding the COVID-19 vaccination coverage and confidence among the LGBT populations and identifying the conditions under which disparities exist can help tailor local efforts to increase vaccination coverage, according to the authors of this study. And this is the one that I know Shaquille's going to love. Adding sexual orientation and gender identity to national data collection systems would be a major step toward monitoring disparities and developing a better informed public health strategy to achieve health equity for the LGBT population, they added.
He's totally in favor. I can see silence is acquiescence.
No, I'm just.
Oh, wait. He has his own
for
opinion
you to explain the rest of the nonsense. So, I mean, there's so much I can say here, but let's just start with this. So if I sit there and say, look, I currently identify as a woman. My pronouns are now she and her for the rest of the show. I'm a 15-year-old woman or 15-year-old girl. That's how I identify. But tomorrow I identify back as my normal self as a male. What does the health department get out of the fact that today I identified as a girl? What does that prove? Other than the obsession with race, with gender expression, with sexual orientation. Mark, by the way, what left-wing trite did you actually pull this from?
Left-wing trite? This is just facts that come from the United States of America.
Yeah, which newspaper or which, very, fair and balanced piece of
definitely not Fox
media
News.
Company presented this thing about
Well, you'll be glad to know it was not the New York Times. It was the New York Daily News.
Oh, the New York. It wasn't. Sorry, the New York Times. Did you say?
No, it was the New York.
It was not the New York Times. It's the New York Daily News.
We're giving the New York Daily News some love.
Yes. Yes, another bastion of
free speech. It's free speech here, baby.
Oh,
you don't have down unders.
No problems. You can absolutely have your have free speech. I agree with that. But let's not say that it's all fair and balanced and everything.
It's fair and balanced.
That's the book.
But that's by a discredited attorney, from what I understand, who's a media celebrity. I guess that's who you follow. You follow some celebrity hack.
Attorney who's made $100 million a year. Is that
well, you follow a media hack. Okay, what you got to do is follow a real lawyer who practices law in front of a real court, or a real judge who actually practices as a judge in front of a real court, not some fake meatball. So why do you send us a fake thing? I mean, the last fake thing you guys did in Australia is you backed this guy Trump, and you sent us a celebrity apprentice as president, not a person who's qualified.
Hang on.
Some guy who's never done anything.
Hang on. Did you just say that Australia?
You were meddling in our elections, okay? Everybody knows Australia likes to meddle in U.S. elections, and so was Canada, trying to get Trump elected. So just deal with it. And not only that, you tried to overthrow our whole government. I saw those crazies there that were on January 6th. So Hey, Sasha has arrived from Canada. Speaking of which, the news I want to get to, of course, is Ukraine, because I sent all this stuff to Ukraine, and I feel like if we don't give Ukraine love and affection, then the people that watch us from Ukraine, which we do get viewers from Ukraine, as well as Lithuania, leave us. They go, well, you're not even talking about us. We don't even care about Ukraine. Okay, which gives us our first question. Why do we even give a rat's rear about Ukraine? You know, Sasha, it's way over there. There's 45 million farmers. You know, why does the United States even care if Russia takes it over? If they don't take it over. You know, my golf game will not improve or disapprove tomorrow.
What about
Why do we give a rat's
Taiwan? Is your golf game is going to be improved if Taiwan will
No,
go under control
no,
of China?
no. It'll make no difference at all. So why do we give a rat's rear about Ukraine? That's what I want to know.
Then the U.S. should abandon all its interests around the world, become a regional power, and just do whatever it needs to do in its own country. And that's it. It might as well cut its army in half, maybe more, destroy half of its air carriers,
Mhm.
the planes, and all the other wonderful things that it has. And I don't think it will affect your golf game.
Yeah, right. Well, this see, this is what my thinking is. If we don't do that, we're going to run out of money for Social Security and Medicare.
You will
There's
run
not-
out of money anyway. But,
well, the thing is,
but there is a China. China will bail you out. Don't worry about
that's
that.
true. But we've been borrowing money from China for years, you know. So,
We've been borrowing money for
but
them
my
for,
question is, why
don't-
are we being persistent? When I go on the Chinese sites, they go United States medals in all these countries. Okay, which is true.
Don't buy the feeding hand,
Yeah.
the hand which feeds you, which is China. Don't bite it. Just be friendly, be nice,
Well,
say nice things. Send delegation to the Chinese this Olympics, which by the way started already, and that's it. And then cut all your armed forces and carriers and so on, and everybody will be happy, and all U.S. People will start playing golf.
well, you did see that Putin decided because of the crisis to go visit Xi Jinping. Did you see that?
But
No,
it was planned visit, and
Mhm.
Putin, unlike U.S., he is playing very smart with Xi. He is paying him respect, and he is asking him what to do. Xi told him to get out of Kazakhstan. Putin did it in less than 24 hours. Guess what? America would tell him to get out of Kazakhstan. It would take 75 years. But China, one day, Putin is out.
Mhm.
So now you can see who is real master. And Ukraine, it's also the China is in charge. Nobody else but
Well,
China.
yeah, I mean, so if you look at the end game, because we know that China has taken over Australia, the Australians suck up to the Chinese all the time because that's where they export all their worthless minerals to, and they even did an alliance
For our worldwide audience, we have another American who has no idea what's going on in Australia.
Well, you can inform me because this is the news that I'm getting. Since you're down under, mate. Okay, the news I get is that you guys are like in hotsy footsie beds with the Chinese, and
Really?
they sit there and,
Show me the news article that
you know.
tells you that.
I'll go pull them. Okay, next time. I thought you were totally aware of the
Yeah.
fact that your minerals are being exported to China and you're totally dependent on China.
We're in a
You know.
major. We're having a major diplomatic spat with China and have had one for a little while now. I want to come back to Mark. So, Mark, I just want to make sure I understand the situation. So, the CDC wants there to be equity in healthcare for the LGBTQ community. Not everybody. We don't want everybody to have.
They
equity.
did a study, which is why
hang
I'm
on.
saying.
Let me finish my question.
Yes.
So they don't want it for everybody, just the LGBT community. And what they're worried about is that gay and lesbian people have a higher vaccination rate than transgender and non-binary people. The transgender and non-binary people have approximately the same level of vaccination as heterosexual people, which indicates that there's a problem. Am I to say that correctly?
Like I said, I was just shocked that they did a whole article on it. So, like I said, I was trying to figure out why we're going on this whole orientation trip and everything. But along similar lines,
isn't that the sort of victim Olympics that you're into, Mark?
no, I'm not into victim Olympics, but I was going to bring up another issue and everything.
Gets added. I mean, what about the non-binary black people? What about the non-binary people that are different shades of black because you're into colorism? You know, well, what about the Hispanic, you know, the Hispanic gender fluid 15-year-old? You know, what happens there?
Well, first off, there have been actually pushes, and there have been calls to actually get groups of those demographics more vaccinated, because there are some groups that have biases that are real biases because of some historical things that existed. So there have been efforts even here in Durham and other places to actually attack those biases. Hold on a second. Wait, that's my question. Like, there are biases based on experimentation in Tuskegee and other places, and even like
You can't just
experimentation.
start a comment on the wrong footing. You said that there's a push for higher vaccination rates. No, there's not. There's a push for equity. So really what you would want to do, right, if you can't get people to be more vaccinated, if you can't get a higher percentage of that population to be more vaccinated, what you have to do is you have to actually withhold vaccines from people that don't fit into that community. That's what you do at university, right?
No,
you don't try to encourage
totally
minority
the whole
groups
thing and
to
everything.
get
What
into
they have
university.
said,
What you want to do is you want to hold back people, right? Prevent people from having the position because if you can't increase the minority participation, what you've got to do is you've got to decrease majority participation, right? That's how you've got to do it.
that is totally wrong, and I don't know where the heck you're getting your facts from. I'm just telling you what I've learned from talking to actual doctors and actual people that are in the field that have actually said that they have gone into certain communities, like the African American community and other communities, to make sure that people are getting the vaccination and that they are attacking the vaccine hesitancy that may exist for legitimate reasons. And some of those legitimate reasons are historical. So they are going and attacking those reasons, saying that, yes, we understand that you might have concerns about the Tuskegee experiment, you might have concerns about other things, but we're going to actually prove that this is not the case.
Hang on a second. So they're legitimate reasons if minority communities have a problem with that, then there's historical reasons which are legitimate. But you guys think it's absolutely hilarious when the virus started to uptick in Republican areas and said that Republicans were all these horrible people that didn't want to get vaccinated. I mean, come on. And when I pointed out, well, hang on, there might be reasons why people, and especially minority communities in the South, such as the Tuskegee issue, when I brought that up in defense of why conservative people in the South may have some problem with it, oh, no, that doesn't fly. But all of a sudden now it flies. When
I never said that it didn't fly, and I brought it up in several shows, including several of my own and everything. So I never said that it didn't fly. I never said the religious reasons didn't fly. And there are religious reasons that are some of the reasons that those on the Republican side have not wanted to get vaccinated. And there are religious reasons that people have as well. And I never said that they didn't fly. People have their different reasons for the things that they want to do and everything. And if they can make legitimate reasons, then they can get some of those exemptions. I know a friend of mine that is going for an exemption right now.
Who's the judge of whether or not their reasons are legitimate?
I'm sorry.
Look, you're not gonna win me over on this. You know, the relevance of somebody's sexual orientation is zero. There is no relevance to that whatsoever. This is just another piece of rubbish that's written by some journalist who has to print something to fill a newspaper or to fill the tabloid, fill the pages. And so they've just come up with some.
They were looking at the CDC, and like I said, the CDC does these demographic breakdowns, which, like in this particular case, I think it was really surprising people that they went in that realm and everything, because it was a CDC study. Our lovely organization that loves to do studies on all kinds of things, but it was a CDC study is what they were reporting on. That was this whole orientation discussion and everything. But I was going to bring up another issue that I know you're going to love as well, Shaquille and Sasha. Hold on a second. I'm going to bring up another issue that I'm sure y'all are going to love, because yesterday, and this comes down to the whole question of trying to appease to two sides. One side that wants to have the police accountable, and the other side that definitely wants to try to address the fact that there is gun violence. So President Biden went yesterday to New York and everything, and he said he wanted to step up the fight against gun violence by working more closely with police and communities to stop the surging bloodshed. His exact words were, "Enough is enough. We can do something about this." What a amazing quote and everything. And then he also wants buy-in from the state and local officials as he just suggests ways to spend federal dollars and expand on initiatives that are already there. But he is apparently pushing for some things around assault rifles and other things. And he did say the answer is not to defund the police. It is to give you the tools, the training, the funding to be partners, to be the protectors, and know the community. But even in this particular article, they did say that he is navigating a very complex situation, because on one hand he's got to ask for greater accountability, on the other hand he's got to make sure that the bad apples and those that are actually profiling
So I've got two questions for you as a response, Mark. One, are those two things mutually exclusive? Are they? That the people that want police accountability don't want to reduce gun violence. Those people are like, yeah, more murders. We want more police accountability. We want more murders. Is that the theory?
That is not the theory. The theory is that
police accountability. Come on. And the second question is the more important one. Which left wing, rag did you get this one from?
How come it had to be a left wing rag? This was actually from Anderson, Indiana.
Hey, well,
from what newspaper?
The Herald Bulletin in Anderson, Indiana.
The Herald Bulletin. Okay, well, let's just see who owns the Herald Bulletin, shall we?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Sorry I'm late. It's one of those days I had a number of events to attend. I wanted to, Mark, if it's okay, I wanted to open up with what my report was, I guess my monologue, and then I'm going to redo the monologue on Monday. But I've got another press conference to attend in a few minutes, so I'll be leaving soon. But welcome to World Edition on Pod TV, soon be a part of the Roku network. And the exciting news that I want to announce to everyone around the world and the country is a huge announcement yesterday at Church Street Park in Morrisville, North Carolina, which is in the Research Triangle Park, and in North Carolina, which is the 8th largest state in the United States, that we entered into a partnership, our town, with Major League Cricket. And they announced a multi-million-dollar public-private partnership to invest in the expansion of our Church Street Park to upgrade the facility into an international cricket venue. Yes, cricket. And so this will be a 3,000 seating, 3,500 seating stadium. And the exciting thing is that it will enable us to serve as and bid on becoming a host for the 2024 T20 World Cup, which is supposed to get about 500 million viewers around the world. So Morrisville will be on the top of the list to get that. It also will become the new training ground for Team USA cricket, for training as they train for World Cup and national competitions. This was really a great event. And I think that if you're listening around the world, please don't hesitate to contact me or Mark Lee to learn more about it. Cricket is a global sport. And it took a lot of investment, millions and millions of minutes and hours and hundreds of hours on the fields, youth and cricket, youth players, league organizers, former Mayor Mark Stolman, all of the leaders of our community, our council, our staff, previous councils, working on just getting cricket to the point. And now we've taken that investment and that vision and we've turned it into millions of dollars of investment. So, Mark, I just wanted to share that news with everybody. And we'll get back to talking about guns and maybe a little bit about Olympics as we want to explore China's no COVID policy and whether or not we think that's going to stand true while we have Olympians competing. I'm looking forward to the opening ceremonies tonight, probably already happened. And, hoping we can talk a little bit about, what it's going to be like. But anyway, back to the great issue of guns. My good friend Shaquille Latimer for Doubt Ender, upset about, I think it's continuing our healthy debate.
And speaking of healthy debate, just a little bit about the gun statistics. Apparently, and this is from that article, from that lovely paper in Anderson, Indiana, they said that guns are at the center of the debate as the nation grapples with homicides that spiked nationally in 2020. Even before the spike, 75% of all homicides in the U.S. were due to firearm injuries, and guns were responsible for 91% of youth homicides, once again, according to a January report by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control on Gun Violence and Suicides over 2018 and 2019. And apparently there was a record number of firearms purchased in 2 years ago in 2020. So they have law
Oh,
enforcement officers have
wow, I
recovered
wonder why.
historically high numbers of firearms last year and are coming across more firearms stripped of serial numbers, making them impossible to trace. And early
I
data
wonder
suggested
why.
the period between which a gun was purchased and used in a crime and recovered by police has shortened. And to combat by this, the Biden administration is clamping down on traders of ghost guns, homemade firearms that lack serial numbers used to trace them and are often purchased without a background check. And I don't have any immediate theories on that, but maybe you have some as to why the guns have been going up in the last couple of years and everything. I'd love to hear your theory.
Well, no, I can't think of a thing. I mean, defunding the police, mass riots, lawlessness, prosecutors refusing to prosecute crimes. I can't imagine a single reason why people might feel that they need to defend themselves. I'm just, Sasha, can you think of any reason why Americans might want to arm themselves?
How about gun control?
No, it's just complete mystery.
Control? Like where you're down under, mate. You guys confiscated all your guns, okay? And then Australia, to undermine the United States, supports us having guns and killing each other, which I think is just ludicrous. You should come on as the voice of Australia and saying, you should come on to kill. You, as the voice of Australia, should say we should repeal the Second Amendment in the United States because we don't even have one here in Australia, and get rid of all the guns because we did that in Australia and it was successful.
Well, it wasn't successful for a start, and I don't agree with what our very conservative Prime Minister John Howard did in relation to confiscating guns. And also, I'm not the voice of Australia, which is more important. I'm the voice of me, not the voice of this great nation. I don't spend an awful lot of time in this country because of the ridiculousness of their regulations. So I'm certainly not the voice of this country. And I'll just remind you again, Nick, that the Second Amendment, as much as you guys in America love to think that you guys came up with this by yourself, the Second Amendment is something that was fought for in the Magna Carta.
Oh, the right to bear arms. Well, let's put it this way. Apparently, they didn't fight too hard because my brethren over to the left, in Canada, they actually control their guns and they control the violence. So, Sasha, since you're up in Canada, speak to the voice of reason. Since we're listening from Australia, the wild people in Australia that have gun control, which does work just like you do, and we don't. What are your thoughts?
I really think we should change that voice of reason.
It's great byline. I got another one for let's see, Steve Rao. Here we go.
It's a controversial issue in U.S. and by the way in Canada as well. A lot of Canadians feel that they would be better off if they would have guns. And by the way, you can apply for a license and actually have a gun. The only thing is, in Canada, you will not have semi-automatic rifles, and so that's so I don't know if a lot of people in Canada would love to own semi-automatic rifles or not. It's actually that subject has not been lately on discussion, at least for quite a while. So I think that the present legislation is makes everybody somewhat happy, at least put it this way.
Yeah. Now, why doesn't the United States follow the policy of Canada?
Nick?
Well, along those same lines, hold on a second. Along those same lines, Biden apparently in his conversation there in New York said that he would increase community support for different programs that are existing and summer jobs for teenagers, which I know can definitely help because sometimes the teenagers get bored and they start doing nonsensical things and things along those lines. But he also said better resources for those coming out of prison. So I would love to hear what folks have to think about this, because one of his exact quote was, when someone finishes their time in prison, you can't give them $25 and a bus ticket. They need to be able to train for and get a job, find a stable housing, re-enter society, and have a second chance at life. It sounds reasonable to me, but I was just wondering what my esteemed panelists think about this idea of actually putting some actual programs into place that could actually help them re-enter society and maybe even be quote unquote successful members of a society after they've made whatever error they may have done in the by being criminals and having a criminal background. But definitely, I've got at least and a couple of them I think have been on some of my shows, and some I'm going to reach out to some folks that have gone through the system, and in some cases are running very successful programs to help others get out of the system as well. But I just wanted your thoughts about this idea that he's pushing to actually help folks get housing and reenter society and have that second chance.
Actually, I think that if in U.S. in prison system conditions would be similar, or even better, who knows, than in countries like Holland, for example, there is very little incentive for them to leave that system and go in the real world and fight for jobs and try to make a living without any profession, without any investments, or without anything. They're much better off to stay. I would think that if you will make conditions in U.S. prisons as harsh as possible, that would provide a huge incentive for people to, first of all, to not even to enter that system. Second of all, if you're unfortunate enough to enter, to leave it, run as soon as possible, try to enter real life. That's what I would say.
Well,
I mean, isn't part of the problem? And Nick,
one problem that we have that is not addressed, because our colleagues from Australia and Canada don't have near the amount of people.
As I said, Nick, I think that the name that I've given you now is a much better name.
Voice of Truth, and I didn't know you had access to the boards. I was thinking this guy doesn't have access to the boards.
yeah, he's got access.
He does. We're in deep trouble.
But before you answer and everything, include the Voice of Truth.
Hang on, Mark. Let Nick respond. Sasha's responded. Let Nick go. Obviously, going to respond to his drivel in a second.
Wait. The Voice of Treason needs to speak. Okay, the thing is, okay, you got to look at this. All right, we have more prisoners than Canada and Australia combined. Of course, we have more population, but we have like 2 million. A lot of the people are in for nonviolent crimes, aka drug trades. Things that should be civil matters, not criminal matters. People that smoke marijuana. We're trying to get people out on jail right now on one of our TV shows that Cheech and Chong showed up on this week, both of them, because like if Sasha was walking outside the streets of Washington D.C. and he lights up a joint between his chess games, the police are all over him. Then they throw him in jail and say you're going to be there for life because this is your third offense. Okay, we got that garbage going on in our criminal justice system. So of course you need you need a big reform here, Mark. It's not just helping people out.
Smoking a joint.
That's how it works in California.
Smoking a joint in California.
And how would you know? You're in Australia.
Well, the laws are the laws, and it's not a felony, so it's not a 3-strike rule. It's not a 3-strike rule of misdemeanors.
State law issue, guy. It has nothing to do.
That's right. It's a state. That's right. It's a state law issue.
California changed that.
California does not have a 3-strikes law on misdemeanors.
The federal government didn't. Okay, so the thing is, if you came over here, Shaquille, and you lit up a joint, and that's the reason I use Washington D.C. because the federal police would go, oh, he committed a federal crime. Time to arrest Shaquille and stick him in jail. Or if he's smoking cocaine or whatever the heck he's doing, time to go to jail. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous policy that was by our Republican called Nancy Reagan. Remember them? Ronald Reagan. Okay. How wonderful they did.
Bill Clinton didn't have a tough on crime policy.
Not only did they create the great divide where the billionaires can literally blow down bridges in Rotterdam, Australia, which is what Jeff Bezos is doing now to push his mega yacht through. Because remember, he is Jeff Bezos. Okay. Not only did they allow runaway wealth like that to exist, but they also incarcerated millions of people that don't belong in jail, and they need to pay for it. So what I would do is put a super billionaire tax on all these people and just whack them big time, baby. Yeah. Make them pay for the Republican crimes that they created.
If you want some sort of sensible answer, Mark and Steve, welcome back. What I would say is that whether or not people had runaway wealth has got nothing to do with the issue of incarcerations. Yes, people that are there for minor offences probably shouldn't be there. Bail reform that Democrats are going for at the moment sounds like a good idea when you've got somebody on a generally, generally at the low end of the offending scale who's going to end up spending a year in county jail on remand. doesn't make an awful lot of sense.
How
But the
much of
issue about
Shaquille,
trying to provide services and reintegrating people as they leave prison or jail back into the community, that's something that I support very strongly. As you guys know, I'm involved in some charities that are involved in that sort of thing. I believe in finality as well. So once you've done your time, you've done your time. And with a few exceptions, such as egregious sexual offences and things like that, if you've done your time, you should be able to move on in your career without people being able to go back and check your criminal record and say, well, look, when you were 20 years old, you passed a bad check, which is technically a fraud. And so therefore, now that you're 35 years of age, you can't be a school teacher. That to me sounds ridiculous. I think there should be lots of reform. It's not just in the United States, it's again around the world where we need to reform these sorts of things to reintegrate people. But this doesn't really have anything to do with the executive branch of government, Nick. This is, as you just pointed out before, a state issue.
well, one of the questions I was going to
I wouldn't say
one of
that.
the
Wait,
questions
hold
on
on
a
a
second.
Hey, come on. Let's not let him pass on this. As
No,
he's
but Nick,
trying
one of the
to
questions I
give
was going
legal
to ask
opinion.
really quick.
There's federal and state law issues relating to drug crimes
But all the Biden,
in this
all the Biden
country.
can do is
Please
all the Biden
don't
can
give
do
us the
is
Australian opinion.
hang
like
on, Nick. All the Biden can do is initiate a program if he wants to use federal dollars to do it, to try to reintegrate people that are up on federal offences. He can't do anything about those people that have got that did a life sentence because they were caught.
Why are you supporting
an ounce of marijuana 3 years ago?
Joe Biden could easily say, "I'm going to introduce legislation to repeal the criminalization of marijuana," right?
Yeah,
why isn't he doing it?
But that would only apply federally. There'd be nothing to do. That wouldn't.
A lot of the states have already repealed it.
He could repeal it federally. The states could still individually have laws against drugs if they wanted to, or laws that allow to have drugs. And let's not forget that a pretty crucial part of the 10th Amendment is that states are allowed to annul. Oh, I've said it. They're allowed to nullify federal law if they wish to.
I think you have a real misgiving of the 10th Amendment.
Every time this has come up about the nullification of federal laws, the Supreme Court has been wishy-washy.
I don't think you read the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, and that's where the federal laws will actually overrule the state laws. I know it works
really?
in my area. Yeah,
really. I reckon I can give you a whole heap of examples of where the Supreme Court has chosen to say that actually the states are able to nullify because they've got their own rights. And then in other cases say that they can't. For example, West Virginia, absolutely you can secede from Virginia. Of course you can. Secession is a critical part of the Constitution. But Dixie, the great land of Dixie, no, you can't secede. Once you agree to join the Union, you're never allowed to leave.
Also part of the reason why they weren't allowed to leave is they were going to not pay their fair share of the federal debt on the way out the door. Okay.
So let's talk about this again.
Hold on a second, Shaquille, and Nick, I did have one very quick question to ask both of you.
The South
wants to talk about the fair share, right? Yeah. How much fair share should the South have paid? Oh, let's get this. 93% of taxes just before the Civil War was paid by the South. Because what did America do? They put on all these tariffs and they hurt the South in order to help the North. And then they wondered why the South was unhappy.
The South was not paying. They were going to leave because they didn't want to pay their fair share
because they were sick and tired of
the
paying
federal
all
debt. And
because
also the
richest
state in the Union, the richest state was the Natchez Trace in Mississippi. And you know what they were, Shaquille? You know what they did for a living? They were what they call slavehold owners. I know that down under that you guys don't have a history.
There was only some wealth that came from that. Some wealth that came from that.
A lot of wealth.
Slavery was a big part of the labor force in the South. But the money made by the slave trade was all made in New York and in the northern states. Okay, the northern states were so responsible for this. You guys want to try and rewrite history to suit yourselves?
No, this is our history. We should talk about your history.
Horrible, oppressive races.
Okay. Talk about your Australian history where you mates went out and you just shot the Aborigines when you saw them. You shot them like deer. Okay, the Chinese pointed that out to me. I was going, You got to be kidding me. So I had to go fact check it.
Yeah,
And it was
Australia,
true.
Australia has had
Australia had some issues.
Australia has had a very checkered past. We still do not have a treaty with our Indigenous people, which we should have, given that every other country has done so on our advice, and then we haven't done it here in Australia. It's an appalling record. But that doesn't have anything to do, and that doesn't mitigate anything that I've just said about the United States. The idea that the northern states of the United States were these, they were walking around with clean hands, and the southern states, one, were these, horrible racists, and two, that they weren't paying their fair share is just simply factually incorrect. And you know it too, Nick. I know you know it. I can see that.
If you followed it, the Washington Congressional Record, which I have a copy of, which I could send you to educate you, just like Whoopi needs to be educated. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You need 2 weeks to go read the Congressional Record. You'll see that what the southern states were doing back then, okay, not only the tyranny of slavery for the economic gain of a few.
And all the slave traders that were from the north.
The economic gain of a few on the oppression of many. What they were also doing is they were saying, we're going to go this to the fair share national debt of our acquisition of the Louisiana Purchase and actually the acquisition of Florida. They're just going to throw it off the door.
But when you say fair share, what you really mean by that is just like, the rich need to pay their fair share. But what we mean by fair share is all of it. The southern states were paying all of it. They were paying all of it.
No, the thing is, the rich in the United States don't pay their fair share to begin with. Warren Buffett has tried to point it out, but the problem is our financial education is so low that people can't figure it out. Okay, and Warren Buffett said this, which is true. And our Social Security and Medicare taxes take 15.3% of your income. But if you make more than $147,000, 12.4% goes away. Your taxes are reduced. Okay, your taxes are reduced. So once you make over $147,000, I told my employees this a long time ago, and they were all stunned. They're going, I had no idea. And I was going, that's because you guys never made more than $147,000 a year in your life. So you don't even know that as you get higher brackets, your taxes could actually go down as a percentage of your net worth and income. And you know that, Shaquille. You're
going to love this one, Shaquille. Well, a couple of things that I was going to ask questions about. One is, and I don't know the answers, and I will admit the things that I don't know the answers about. But one of the problems with the prison system here is that a lot of the prison system here is privately owned and things of that nature. I don't know if that's the same case in Australia and Canada, but we do have a lot of that. Is very much of a big issue here, is that there's a lot of private owned, corporate owned kind of prisons. But you will love this one and everything. And I do want to hear about how the prison system is there in Canada and Australia. But the New York Times, they actually had an opinion columnist that wrote an article. I know you think that that's a left-wing piece of trite and everything, but he did have a very interesting point, kind of along the lines of what you just said, and that was Jamel Bowie, who wrote that he had written this long piece about slavery, and he actually did say some of the things that you just said, because he was talking about the kind of relation that the slaves, that the people in the North had to the whole market of slavery and things of that nature. So he was actually written one about slaveholders in the upper South states like Virginia and Maryland, which produced a surplus of the enslaved labor, which they sold to traders. These traders brought their captives to markets in Charleston and Savannah and New Orleans, where they would be sold to the highest bidder to labor and produce profit. Enslaved women were expected as well to produce new capital in the form of children for their enslavers. And he was one of the people that he was bringing up was, in addition to this point, it is always we're saying why there was such a surplus to begin with, and the answer is a product that we love very much here in North Carolina called tobacco. So definitely tobacco was the backbone of the slavery in the South, is what this article talks about, meaning that it was the backbone there in Virginia and Maryland and all of that. So he actually acknowledged some of what you just said, Shaquille, but I was kind of curious about this whole notion of corporate slavery. I mean, not corporate, but corporate prisons and things of that nature, because I'm not sure how they runs in other countries.
Well, gentlemen, it's been one of those days where it's been in and out today. Work is actually picking up. We're going to continue. I'm going to be back on Monday. Real quickly, just we talked about guns and Biden's appearance with Eric Adams, the mayor of New York. We'll continue that discussion. We didn't talk about the no COVID policy of China. That's one thing we have to watch is the no COVID policy has been something that, their regime is showing that our government works, Western governments don't work. There's been some provinces like the Zhangjiao province where only 50,000 cases and they just lock down everything. And that's actually hurt the supply chain in China and many factories shutting down, which, we bear the brunt of that with supply chain disruptions in the U.S. and all around the world. So we'll talk about that. And Mark, I'll let you go. Real quickly, we are bringing Mark Lee on Radio Naira. Mark, that interview will be today at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
And we will be talking about Black history. Is there one Black leader you'd like to just mention today, like you always do, that we don't talk about often?
Well, this time I'm going to go with one that is historical, and that is one that I think that people need to read some of his works and everything along those lines. And he is actually one that is mentioned quite often, but I don't know that everybody has read his works as much as they should and everything. So this time I'm going to mention the historical figure of Frederick Douglass. So definitely Frederick Douglass would be the one that I would want folks to do more research on and see some of his views, both one on slavery, but also just on independence and freedom in general. He had some very good views into my mind and all of that. But Frederick Douglass is a hero of mine. And of course, he was a great journalist as well, because he also did some publishing as well. So definitely that is the one that I will mention today and everything. And speaking of freedom and the media, yes, you're going to love this one, because when I'm doing my research, contrary to what Shaquille might think, I do look at all sources. So this one I got from Fox News, which we know is probably the opposite of what he says that I get most of my stuff from, because it's more of a right-wing kind of publication. But Nick, you're going to love this one. Apparently, Fox News has said that there has been a full media blockage of a major story. So they have in big letters, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post have completely avoided John Hopkins' study finding that COVID lockdowns were ineffective. So, and they also added ABC, CBS, and NBC to their idea of folks that were not covering this story. And their exact quote, and maybe we can talk about this on Media Monday, was there has been a full-on media blackout of the new study outlining the ineffectiveness of lockdowns to prevent COVID deaths.
I think that's fake news. I get my news from the New York Times. I want to make sure that Shaquille sees this bastion of intellectual knowledge, as opposed to whatever he's getting it from Fox News Australia. And
I agree. I agree.
The lockdowns actually do work.
It is a great bastion of intellectual knowledge, but
Yes.
only an academic would think that.
There we go. The bastion of economic knowledge. Anyway, New York Times. But see, here's the thing: is lockdowns actually do work. And we have examples like New Zealand, where they locked the whole country down to keep the COVID-19 out, and their rates are a lot less than ours. Why is ours so great? It's because we don't do anything. We have people like DeSantis who say, go out there and spread the diseases. Then you have all these other crazies, governors in South Dakota and the Midwest, who do the same thing. Oh, go ahead and have fun. We don't really care. So it's really the fault of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, the reason they're not in office is they screwed up COVID-19.
I don't recall, and I pay a lot of attention to US politics, I don't recall ever hearing a state governor say, please go out and spread the disease, or please go out and have fun, and we don't really care what happens to you. I don't recall.
I guess you missed DeSantis. Can
you give me a specific quote from
DeSantis' policy of that?
No, not his policy. Did he actually make that statement that you've just quoted?
Did he make that statement? No, but the thing is, he didn't make that statement. But in effect, that's what he's doing when he says, it's like this. Hey, go ahead and party down without mask and ignore COVID-19. That's what he does. And he's the front runner for your Republican Party. Give me a break.
It's been from our family to yours. I welcome you. I wish you all well this weekend. And I got to leave. I'll be back Monday. Mark, I'll talk to you at 3:00
All right.
For our interview. And we'll be continuing our discussion, working on getting the mayor of Apex, North Carolina, as a guest in one of these days. Mark Lee will be rolling out some different Black History guests next week.
Yes.
And I'm working on the World Cricket CEO as well. He's going to come on the radio first, but we're going to try to bring him on, Tom Dunham. So thank you all so much. Be safe wherever you are.
Appreciate you. And we still got a few more minutes to go and everything. But yes, according back to this media study, apparently Johns Hopkins had a meta-analysis of several studies where they said that lockdowns during the first COVID wave in the spring of 2020 only reduced COVID mortality by 0.2% in the U.S. and the Europe. And that's where Fox is saying that the rest of the media is missing this story.
Well, the thing is, okay, but let's get real. If you read the data, it said it did reduce, okay, and then you also got to look at the data and how the facts were promulgated. For example, we know that in New Zealand they did a lockdown. We know in New Zealand it worked tremendously. We know that Australia, even though Shaquille hates his government, I don't know why, they locked down to keep COVID.
I hate all governments.
Okay, but he hates all governments. So Australia, just add them to the list. But the thing is, it worked. So you got to take the study with a grain of salt. And the reason they didn't promulgate it is the conclusion was it doesn't work. We're based on facts and circumstances that had nothing to do with the policy of how the lockdown took place, Your Honor. And hence, they did the correct thing by not promulgating basically a fake conclusion on a study that was never really peer-reviewed or explained. So I wouldn't reproduce it either, Mark. At least the conclusion you said is, yeah, it did work. It worked minusculely, and it was working under certain terms and conditions. So what happens is the inferior minds out there, aka the readers, would come quickly to the conclusion, especially your friends at Fox, that lockdowns don't work. And that's totally incorrect. Totally incorrect. A good chess analysis like Sasha would say, these guys are 800 players when it comes to media. Get rid of Fox. They do not know how to play.
But Fox is not even news. It's entertainment station.
It's entertainment. There we go. Let's go in further.
Just to make sure that I understand
the only people who listen to Fox is guys like Shaquille down under because he can't get it.
Just to make sure I understand the rationale that goes on in your academic mind.
You mean my strong economic?
You believe that the lockdowns have worked because New Zealand, which is a couple of islands, and Australia, which is a couple of islands,
one big island,
closed their border. We actually have Tasmania. So
yeah, you have Tasmania and a couple others out there,
right? So we've been able to close our borders. Now New Zealand, very interesting. They closed their borders and locked down. They even locked down islands where there were 0 COVID cases. So nobody had COVID. They were locked down anyway. And then they say, well, look, nobody got COVID. What a success lockdowns were. That makes sense to you, does it?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is, what happens is...
I am so glad for your country. I am so glad for your country that you left the Republican Party and joined the Democrats.
Yeah, because the thing is, I had to get out of the land of unreasonable people and go to ones that are a little crazy, but a little more reasonable. But somewhere along the line, I got to go back to the independents because they're crazy on.
Did you notice, Mark? Nick said before what he watches Fox and all that. I announced at the beginning of this show that I am for this show a 15-year-old girl. You've misgendered me. And now I'm very offended and I feel very oppressed.
You should feel oppressed. I do have a question for you.
Standing up for me.
Because coming back to your Fox and everything, apparently in that same article, they said that Republican governors, and they said it, not me, rejected the progressive outrage over in-person learning. They're going to remain open. So apparently there's a big push in some of the Republican states to stay open and everything during this whole COVID. And there's even though there might be incidents where people are still having incidences and still getting the disease in these school settings, the Republican governors are being very stern on the way that they want to handle it, and that's what Fox said, not Mark. So I was just wondering your response to that.
To what?
Should they be that hard-headed about it and everything? Because it says about 97% of U.S. teachers said their students have experienced learning loss during the coronavirus pandemic, and there's some stuff about unemployment as well. But that's neither here nor there for what
What's the question that you want me to respond to about teachers?
I want to know
that's a
because
given.
what they specifically said, which actually surprised me in this article, was that it was the Republican governors were rejecting this progressive outrage. Is what they said it was over in-person learning. So some of the parents are saying we'd rather our students learn from home and
keep your kids at home. If you're a progressive parent and you want to teach your kids from home, or you want to teach your kids that gender doesn't exist or whatever, then do that. That's fine. Why do you want to make sure that other people can't? If I want to send my kid to school and you don't want to send your kid to school, you keep your kid home. I'll send my kid to school. What does it got to do with you? What I'm doing with my kid?
I agree with Shaquille on that one. I really don't care. I mean, the thing is, I think they really way overemphasize in-school learning. It's just, although the data tends to suggest that for some reason people do better in classroom situations, but not everybody does well in classroom situation. In other words, some people do better outside the classroom than they do inside the classroom. So I can't just generalize and say, oh, everybody's got to go to school, spread coronavirus, and be taught by a teacher that is going to teach one form of agenda, which Shaquille doesn't like anyway. So he says, I'll keep my kids home.
Yeah, well, I really wish that they would actually have the track system to some degree, because I'm not even sure that exists anymore. But I do remember when I was in school way back in the 70s and definitely in the college years of the 80s, there was a whole track system where somebody could actually be trained to become a auto mechanic or a welder or a number of other fields. Sure. And I don't know that is as strongly as it did some 10 or 15 or even 30 years ago.
Yeah, and they don't do that as much anymore. So, and this is part of the reason why China is going to lead the world and the United States is going to fall behind, because we don't emphasize things like that.
Nick, I have something to follow up on what Mark was talking before about slavery. And first of all, I think that some form of slavery would be very beneficial in the United States, because people.
Wait a minute. Did you hear what he just said? 2-week suspension. 2 weeks. Go on.
However, I have my thoughts about this episode as well, but I will tell some other time. So imagine that there would be slave owners, and they would have their slaves. So they would do anything in order, in case of pandemics, they would do anything to save as many slaves as possible, because it's their property and they are really worried about losing their property. So they would make decisions, and hopefully right decisions, about lockdowns and in school learning or outside, and so on and on. They would do at most anything in order to prosper, and the prosperity means to save as many slaves as possible. So they would do much better than governments, whether it's federal or state or anything else.
Well, that world is coming. I don't know if you see the new development of robotics. The robots are going to take over anyway.
The robots are going to take over the world, but not only that, there are some people that might argue that's actually why they call it the plantation system in a mini corporate America and everything of that nature. There are some, and I might not be one to disagree with them, they would argue that slavery has not really stopped, because we have a plantation mentality among many corporations if we look at the structure of the way they are organized and everything, and who's in charge of what. So
and we don't even
a
want
lot
to
of other companies are actually very much a plantation mentality.
Okay, and you don't even want to go to the Famju family in Palm Beach.
Let's assume that the premise of your statement there, Mark, is correct. That big corporations treat their low-level workers terribly. That in your mind is exactly the same as slavery, is it? Slavery hasn't ended.
It's a plantation mentality. I did not say slavery. I said it's a plantation mentality.
It still does exist today. It still does exist today. So when Shaquille gets to the United States, I'm going to take him to Palm Beach, if he hasn't been there, to meet the Famju family, who owned U.S. Sugar. Then we'll go to Pahokee, which he's probably never been to, called Pahokee, Florida, and Belle Glade, Florida, and see the sugarcane farmers, the migrants that are there
Mm-hmm.
that are encapsulated in these tiny little places where they've got to cut sugarcane or they deport them back to the Dominican Republic. And then we're going to hold our nose up and say,
These
that isn't
people,
slavery. Come
these
on,
people,
Joe.
these
You've
people
never
come over.
been to Belglade.
These people come over by choice. What would you
Oh,
like?
by
America
choice.
to do?
Okay.
What would you like America
Right.
to do? Say, look, you're coming from the Dominican Republic. You haven't finished high school or whatever.
And
You know what
Haiti.
we should do with you? We should put you in charge of Goldman Sachs. Is that the
Haiti.
plan?
And Haiti. Okay. The thing is, I'm willing to bet that if you walked onto the fields, that they would the headmasters would kick you off by even talking to the people that are doing the farm work in Belglade and Pahokee. Okay. Okay, and you've never experienced anything like that because let me tell you something. They probably don't have anything like that.
Firstly, I don't think that there is a head.
But by the way,
right?
there is.
Secondly, we have a big immigration.
Out of Palm Beach.
We have a big immigration or a big immigrant population that works on our farms here in Australia. Okay, we're an agricultural country, but look. The reason why I might not have to go through that is because people further up the line, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, etc., would have had to live in these kinds of conditions, as would the ancestors of every person on this planet, whether they're white, black, yellow, or any other color, even orange. Okay, even orange. Go back a few generations in the Trump family, and let's see what they came from in Europe, shall we?
Let's go to Pahokee, baby. Let's go to Belglade, and then we'll start talking some turkey. Okay, and go Google Pahokee on your map, on your Google map, and Belglade, and research it. And then you'll see what I'm talking about. Then the Fanju family that actually is the super overlord masters that live in Palm Beach in their multi-million-dollar mansions, and we're supposed to worship capitalism, but I think we have to worship ending the show right now.
Yeah, we have to worship ending the show. It's about that time and everything. We can actually talk about some of the other things next week and everything. I'm still getting over the fact that Shaquille doesn't believe in colorism, but that's a whole nother story. But we'll get into that next week and all of that. And definitely, I was going to get to the economy because that's something I was going to bring up for Sasha, because the economy is definitely having some strong indicators that it is on the rebound, according to what some people are saying. But then other folks are saying that we could be heading toward a depression. But on that note, I'm getting ready to get on out of here, unless Sasha wants to tell us what he's got coming up for his show this weekend. So, Sasha, what you got coming up this weekend?
Okay, first of all, speaking about plantations, one of the biggest plantations in the world just lost in one day 25% of its value. I'm talking about, of course, Facebook. In one day, it lost 25% of its value. Now, another smaller plantation, namely Snap, gained since yesterday 50% of it in its value. So what I'm trying to say in modern investing is that unless you are in high yield dividend stocks, all the rest, it's scary even to hold the stocks overnight, because all these things are happening overnight after the market closes at 4 o'clock and before it opens next day at 9:30. Anything can happen to your stocks. So keep your high yielding dividend stocks and prosper. All the rest is a gamble. That's what I'm going to talk. And not only to talk, I'll probably write a few lines about that.
Sounds great. And on that note, we get ready to get on out of here. And we'll be back next week with more exciting discussions and more exciting conversations on all kinds of hot button topics. So on that note, let's get ready to do the intro and outro and get on out of here. Hope everybody has